Hey everybody, I'm Mike Baird. If you like drum stuff, or if you like drum stuff reviews, or you like interviews with people in the music business, or you're not into any of that, but you want to hear a good story about me in the music business, welcome to Mikes Drum Cubby. Welcome, Cubbers, to another episode of Mikes Drum Cubby, the channel I created for you, the Cubbers. Today we got a great one. We're doing a review of 4 sets of Canopus wires. Figure it's a long time coming. We're doing the Backbeat 20 wire. We're doing the Vintage Chrome 20 wire. We're doing the Vintage 20 wire. And then for a kicker, we're taking it old school and we're doing Vintage 16 wire. We're going to talk about the drum we're going to use them on, which is going to be just as important so you get an idea of where we're going with these wires. Then we're going to share a little story about me and how I got involved with Canopus, and then a story about me in the music business. So stick around, and if you dig the channel, hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up. I'm going to want to hear lots of comments. I want to hear how you dig these wires. Anyway, let's get to the drum that we're going to be using the wires on. The drum we're using today for the evaluation is a 1980s Premier wood birch drum, 8 lug. The reason for this drum is when I took it down to my tech to have the edges redone, I brought several sets of Canopus wires with me. And as I was checking them out to see which one I really wanted to use on it, I thought this would make a perfect platform to show off what the Canopus wires can do. Okay, so now that you know the drum, let's get to the wires. This is the Canopus Backbeat. Tuning is about here. No muffling. Here we go. So this is a Canopus Backbeat, and we're going to put a little bit of muffling right here on the snare. And here we go. Okay, this is the Canopus Vintage Chrome. Tuning is still here. Okay. And no muffling. Here we go. Okay, this is the Canopus Vintage Chrome. We're going to put a little bit of muffling on it. We're going to put it right here. And the tuning is still here, still the same tuning. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now we have the Canopus regular vintage 20 wire. Tuning still the same and no muffling. Now the Canopus regular vintage with a little bit of muffling, and it's the same tuning. So now, as promised, we're taking it old school. Canopus Vintage 16 wire, not the 20. 16 wire, same tuning, no padding, no muffling. Okay, we're still old school, the Canopus regular vintage 16 wire with a little bit of muffling. So here we go. Well, we're back. So a little bit of history and my association with Canopus. We have to go back to the early 1980s. And they were a new company. I didn't know anything about them. And snare wires in those days were snare wires. Like whatever snare drum you bought from whatever company, that's kind of what you stayed with. Because that's what you knew. I mean, I'm sure there were exceptions to the rule, but in general, that was the general consensus. You just stayed with that because you liked the sound of it. So when I had to go into Pro Drum Shop. So I go into Pro Drum Shop. Stan and Jerry are there, the owners of Pro Drum, and Stan comes up to me, "Oh, Mike, I'm glad you're here. Listen, there's a new company called Canopus, and they're making these kind of higher-end, better-sounding wires, or at least that's what they're telling me, and they've given me wires to hand out to guys like yourself, the cats that are working, to give them an evaluation, to give them feedback on whether you like them, you don't like them, or improvements, or whatever. Would you like to have a set?" I go, "Well, yeah, I'll take them." So I took them. I happened to be going to the warehouse to get my equipment ready. I went, I picked out a snare drum I thought I was going to use over the next couple of days. Changed them out. Drum sounded good. Okay, but I'm in a warehouse. So over the next 2 days, I get the opportunity to pull this drum out, put it up on the stand. I hit it and was like, wow, this drum sounds really good. And in the studio environment, I was like, wow, this thing is really good. So I track with it. I go in the booth. We listen back, and I'm like, man, that snare drum sounds great. The engineer goes, wow, I really like that snare drum. Now, I don't remember the drum that it was on, but it made a big difference because I remember what it sounded like before I changed the wires. So anyway, that's what started my relationship with Canopus, and kind of the rest is history. Now, I know what I like in their product line, and on what drums I like them on, and so forth and so on. But I'd love to know what you'd like to try in their line, or stuff you have tried in their line, and what drums they're on that you like. I'd love to hear that in the comments, so please send me those comments. And now, a moment with Mike. So one of the very first sessions I actually did, that being in a recording studio, I should say, I got hired as a drummer, actor. Wouldn't say actor, but they wanted a drummer that could act, and it's like they chose me anyway because the guy that was producing 2 late night TV pilots for Don Kirshner was a band that solved murder mysteries. Didn't go anywhere. We did 2. And that was the end of it. But we did an album that was going to be released as a real band. Okay, so I didn't know any of the people, whatever. But when we were cutting this album, they brought in a keyboard player that's also in the movie, whatever. And this guy came to me on a break, the keyboard player, and said, "Hey, I'm doing a demo. Would you like to play on this demo for this artist that I'm working with?" I said, "Yeah, sure." He goes, "Okay, let me have your number, and the guy will give you a call." Okay, so I get a phone call one day. It's a guy, he introduced himself. His name's Robert Appere. Robert Appere, I didn't know, but just to let you know, engineer, producer. Okay, he goes, "I'm engineering, I'm producing." Okay, great. We're doing it at Village Recorders. Do you know where that is? I don't know where any recording studio is, but I said, "No, I don't know, but I'll find it." He goes, "Okay, well, just bring in your stuff at this time and we'll get a sound on you or get your stuff there," is what he said. So he doesn't know that I'm not a regular guy that has a cartage company that carts your drums in and whatever, and I'm just bringing my own stuff. So I said, I'll find it. Well, in those days, you didn't have GPS on your phone. You had a Thomas guide. And these Thomas guides were big books that had different counties, and you'd have to find your way, look up the address and figure out where you lived, and then turn to the pages and figure out a map to get there. So I get there. I bring my stuff in. I'm setting it up. And in those days, I had overalls, bib overalls. And so everybody that's in the band, that I don't know anybody except the keyboard player, thinks I'm the cartage guy, or the people that bring in gear for guys and they set it up and they tear it down and take it back to the warehouse for guys that are working in the studio scene or doing TV and movies. I don't know anything about this. I'm like clueless. So I'm setting up my stuff. So people are thinking I'm the cartage guy. So we start to get sounds. He says, Robert says, let's get some sounds. And all of a sudden my snare the snare wires are gone. They're just laying on the thing. The cord is broken. I don't have any extra cord. I'm not used to doing record dates or anything. I don't know anything about that. I'm used to doing casuals, wedding receptions, that kind of stuff. So I go in the booth, I go, we have a problem. He goes, what's going on? I said, well, my cord broke. I don't have any extra cord. He goes, don't worry about it. We'll make this happen. So we go out in the room. He sits down at my drums. He turns the drums over where the snare wires are. And he takes a piece of duct tape and he duct tapes one side and then duct tapes another. And I'm thinking, oh, is that going to sound very good? And it didn't sound very good. But, he goes, well, I'll get a good sound. Don't worry about it. Okay. So we do the track. It comes out amazing. Track comes out amazing. It wound up being actually a pinnacle point in my career, but that's for another episode. Anyway, I go in and I hear the drum and I'm like, wow. I mean, it sounded like really good. And he goes, I told you I'd get a great sound. Well, anyway, the purpose of that is that those types of things don't really happen much anymore because of the stuff, that like Canopus makes, better cord, strap. Other companies make cord and strap too, but that type of stuff doesn't really happen. And always bring extra, although it does happen because I, the true professional in a previous cubby, talk about not bringing extra cord or not bringing an extra snare drum. So it still happens, but it's like one of those, you got to be prepared, but these type of things in general don't really happen, or you have extra stuff you recover. So that's the story for today. Well, we've come towards the end of another episode. And if you dig the channel, hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, send me comments. I want to hear those comments of what you think about the wires, or if you haven't tried them, what you want to try, all that kind of good stuff. I want to hear it. So what do we always say when we come to the end?
And that's it.
And we'll see you in a minute.